All right, so are you ready to dive deep into some internet conspiracies with me today?
Always.
Awesome. Okay, so today we're going to be looking at this viral social media post from Japan.
Uh-huh.
It popped up around the anniversary of the 2011 Dushoku earthquake and tsunami.
Oh, yeah, the 311 earthquake.
Right, exactly. And what really got people talking was this strange glowing line they found on a heat map.
Hmm.
And people think it might be connected to the disaster.
Interesting.
So let's jump in and see what we can find out about this.
Sounds good.
So this line, it's caused a lot of debate online,
Right.
and it's because of where it's located.
Okay.
So it's in a very unexpected place right in the middle of the Pacific Ocean.
Yeah, not really a place where you'd expect to see a lot of activity going on.
Exactly, yeah. So the heat map that we're talking about here is from Strava. I don't know if you're familiar with Strava.
Yeah, I am. It's a fitness app, right?
Yeah. A lot of people use it to track their workouts and stuff. And it shows, like, where people are exercising all over the world.
Uh-huh.
And, we typically see a lot of activity in Europe,
Yeah.
but not so much in China.
Right.
So this heat map, the one from around the time of the 311 earthquake, it's pretty strange.
What's so weird about it?
Well, like I said, there's this bright line in the Pacific Ocean,
Okay.
an area where there's no land.
Yeah, so what does that mean? What does a bright line on a heat map like that mean?
So usually a bright line on a heat map like Strava means that there's a concentrated group of people that are moving in a straight line.
Huh. That is pretty strange.
Yeah, so,
Okay, so we got a bunch of people or something moving in a straight line in the middle of the ocean.
well, yeah. And to make things even weirder, apparently that same area on Google Maps was unavailable at the time.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. So this definitely sent conspiracy theorists into a frenzy, I bet.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. I mean, people are speculating that this line, that maybe it represents, like, the movement of some military group. Maybe they were involved in some kind of, top secret operation.
I mean, I guess that could be possible, right?
Yeah.
Especially after such a huge earthquake. Like, I'm sure there would be a bunch of military in the area.
Right, to investigate and do relief efforts.
Yeah, exactly. But, there's something that doesn't really add up about that theory.
Oh, what's that?
So Japanese military bases, they usually show up as dark on Strava heat maps.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Because Japan has all those strict rules about using GPS,
Uh-huh.
especially for the military.
Right, exactly. It's like they're not even allowed to have their GPS on.
Yeah, and what's really interesting is even like Japanese politicians and government officials, they're not allowed to use iPhones.
Seriously?
Yeah, because of concerns about GPS tracking.
Wow. I mean, I knew they were serious about data security, but that's next level.
Yeah, they take it super seriously over there. I actually read somewhere that even the base camps that they use for Mount Everest expeditions,
Wow.
they're totally dark on Strava.
No way.
Yeah.
So even on Mount Everest, they're not allowed to use GPS.
Apparently not. It seems like they're pretty strict about it. So that makes it super unlikely that the glowing line is from the Japanese military.
Yeah, that makes sense. So then who or what was it?
Well, that's the big question, isn't it? Could it have been like some other country's military? Maybe.
Maybe.
Or, maybe something else entirely. The source that we're looking at doesn't really give us a clear answer, which makes it even more intriguing.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the Strava line itself is already a pretty strange thing, but the conspiracy theory, it gets even wilder. This is where it goes full conspiracy mode.
Oh, okay.
So basically, this viral post is suggesting that this glowing line is actually some kind of secret underwater military base.
Really?
Yeah, and they think that maybe a nuclear test was being conducted there.
A nuclear test?
Yeah.
How?
And the theory is that somehow this nuclear test triggered the 311 earthquake and tsunami.
Like a chain reaction.
Yeah, exactly. Some sort of chain reaction.
What? And what about the nuclear fallout from the test?
Well, that's where it's even crazier. The theory is that the nuclear test caused radiation to spread, and then they intentionally blamed it on the meltdown at the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant.
So they're saying it was a cover-up.
Yeah, basically.
Wow, a cover-up of that magnitude. That's a pretty big claim.
I know, right? And honestly, it's giving me some serious deja vu.
Oh, how so?
Well, that's some of those 9/11 conspiracy theories, like the ones that say 9/11 was an inside job.
Yeah, I see what you mean. There are definitely some parallels there. I mean, when you look at these types of conspiracy theories, you tend to see some common themes.
Like what?
Well, there's often a mistrust of, like, official explanations.
Right.
And people searching for patterns in, seemingly random events. And there's this desire to believe that someone somewhere is in control,
Right.
even if their intentions are, like, totally messed up.
Yes, like people need to believe there's a reason, even if that reason is some shadowy group, like pulling the strings.
Right.
It almost feels easier to accept that than to accept, you know, the randomness and unpredictability of like, a natural disaster.
Yeah, it's like a way of trying to find order in chaos,
Uh-huh.
to create a narrative that feels more manageable, even if that means believing in, like, these unseen forces that are controlling everything.
Right.
And what I find really fascinating about this particular theory is how modern technology is, like, all wrapped up in it.
Right.
The Strava heat map, the Google Maps blackout.
And don't forget the iPhone ban in Japan.
Yeah, exactly. It's like
Yeah.
our digital world is becoming this, like, breeding ground for all these complex conspiracy theories.
Yeah, it really is. And it makes you wonder, like, as technology keeps advancing, what are the conspiracy theories of the future going to look like?
Oh, that's an interesting question.
Right. I mean, will we see even more, like, elaborate stories
Mm.
fueled by, all the data that we're generating every single day?
Yeah, it almost seems like a challenge to conspiracy theorists, to come up with even more creative and, like, technologically sophisticated explanations for
I
stuff.
know, right? And I'm kind of, like, morbidly curious to see what they come up with.
We do.
But honestly, it really just emphasizes how important critical thinking is,
Yeah, absolutely.
especially in a world where there's just so much information out there
Yeah.
and not all of it's accurate. We need to be able to sift through all of that, figure out what's real, what's not, look at our sources, and like really think about what we're seeing online.
Yeah, we need to develop those, like, internal conspiracy detectors.
Uh-huh.
So we're not just blindly believing everything we see or read online. We need to question things, analyze them, and be open to challenging our own assumptions.
Yeah, for sure.
Which kind of brings us back to what we're talking about today.
The Strava heat map
Yeah.
and the whole nuclear test theory.
Yeah, it really shows how data, technology, and human perception are all intertwined.
Hmm.
Like how information can be interpreted and misinterpreted,
Right.
and then, like, spun into these narratives that might not even be true.
Yeah, it's kind of unsettling when you think about it. But it also makes these conversations we're having so important.
I agree.
We need to unpack these issues, think about them from different angles, and be willing to, discuss topics that are maybe uncomfortable or controversial.
Right. We need to embrace the uncertainty of it all
Exactly.
and the challenges that come with navigating this crazy world of information.
Okay, so we've got this mystery with the Strava heat map and the nuclear test theory.
Mm-hmm.
But there's another part of this whole thing that I think is really fascinating.
Oh, what's that?
So it's the read feature in the messaging app line.
Oh, yeah, you're right. That's something we haven't really talked about yet. That feature was actually inspired by the 3/11 earthquake.
Really? You mean like the little check mark
Yeah.
that shows someone has seen your message?
Exactly.
I use that all the time.
Yeah.
I had no idea that it was designed for, like, disaster situations.
It was. After the 3/11 earthquake, people needed a way to quickly check on each other and make sure everyone was safe.
Oh, I see.
And so that's how the read feature was born. It lets you know that someone saw your message even if they can't reply.
That's really smart.
Yeah. It's such a simple feature,
Uh-huh.
but it's really helpful in emergencies.
Especially if you're in like a group chat or something. Right?
Totally. You can instantly see who's okay. It just goes to show you that even when something terrible happens,
Mm-hmm.
innovation and progress can still come out of it.
That is a good point. The read feature, it's a perfect example of how technology can, like, adapt
Yeah.
to meet our needs,
Uh-huh.
even in the toughest times.
Exactly. Speaking of the 3/11 earthquake, it reminds me of my own experience during the disaster. I was out shopping when it happened.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and I remember how strangely calm everything felt.
Really?
Yeah, like right after that initial shock.
Huh. I was actually reading some accounts from other people who were there,
Yeah.
and a lot of them described that same, like, eerie calm.
Yeah, it's like this moment of disbelief
Right.
before the reality of what just happened sets in.
Totally. And what was incredible was that, all the communication networks stayed up.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, like people could still call and text their loved ones right away to make sure they were okay.
That's amazing.
It really shows how resilient Japan's infrastructure is.
Mhm.
And it also makes you realize how important communication is,
Yeah, absolutely.
especially during a crisis.
Yeah.
It makes you appreciate the things we often take for granted,
Like what?
like being able to connect with loved ones instantly when something bad happens.
Yeah, I agree. It's a reminder that even in the midst of all that chaos and fear, there can still be moments of hope and connection.
Exactly.
It really makes you realize, like, how important communication is during an emergency.
Yeah, absolutely. But, kind of going back to those conspiracy theories we were talking about,
Right.
it's important to remember that a lot of times they come from, like, fear and uncertainty.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, when you're dealing with something as devastating as a massive earthquake and a tsunami,
Yeah.
it's only natural for people to, like, search for answers, try to make sense of, all the chaos.
Exactly. Yeah. And sometimes that search leads them to some pretty wild places.
Yeah, that's true. And, when there's not a lot of clear information available, people start to come up with their own explanations, even if those explanations are a little far-fetched.
Right. Like they offer a sense of control when people are feeling powerless.
Exactly. It's this need to believe that someone is in control,
Uh-huh.
even if it's some, like, shadowy group with bad intentions.
Right. Yeah. It's almost easier to believe in a big conspiracy than to just accept that natural disasters happen randomly.
Yeah, totally. It's about trying to find order in the chaos. Like, they're trying to create a story that makes sense to them,
Right.
even if it means, imagining these powerful forces that are secretly controlling everything. And what's really interesting to me is how technology plays into all of this.
Oh, yeah.
Like with the Strava heat map and the Google Maps blackout.
Right. Right. And the iPhone ban in Japan.
Exactly. It's like all these things from our digital world are becoming part of the conspiracy.
It's true. Technology is like a character in the story now, which brings up a big question.
What's that?
As technology gets more advanced and, more a part of our lives, how is that going to affect conspiracy theories in the future?
Oh, that's a good question.
Right. I mean, are we going to see even more crazy and complex conspiracy theories
Yeah.
because of all the data we're creating every day?
That's a scary thought. It's like a challenge to conspiracy theorists to come up with wilder
Yeah,
explanations.
I can't wait to see what they come up with next. But seriously, it really highlights the need for critical thinking these days.
Yeah.
I mean, we're bombarded with information constantly,
Mm.
and we have to be able to figure out what's real and what's not.
It's like we need to develop our own built-in conspiracy detectors. Right, exactly. We can't just blindly believe everything we see online.
Yeah, that's for sure.
We have to be willing to question things, analyze the information, and even challenge our own beliefs.
And you know what? This brings us right back to what we're discussing today.
The Strava heat map mystery.
Yes. Yeah. It's the perfect example of how data, technology, and our own perception, all of that stuff is intertwined.
Yeah, okay, I see what you mean.
It's amazing how easily information can be interpreted in different ways and how it can be twisted into these stories that might not even be true.
Yeah, it is kind of unsettling when you think about it. But I also think it's why these conversations are so important.
Absolutely.
We need to really dive into these issues, look at them from all sides, and be open to talking about things that might make us uncomfortable.
I agree. We have to embrace the uncertainty and the challenges that come with trying to make sense of the world.
Okay, so we've got this mystery with the Strava heat map
Mm-hmm.
and the nuclear test theory. But there's another part of this that I find really fascinating.
Oh, what's that? The read feature on the Line messaging app.
Oh, yeah, you're right. We haven't talked about that yet. That feature was actually inspired by the 3/11 earthquake.
Really?
Yeah,
You mean that little check mark that shows you when someone's seen your message?
exactly.
I use that all the time. I had no idea it was designed for, like, emergencies.
It was. After the 3/11 earthquake, people needed a way to quickly check on each other,
Yeah.
just to make sure everyone was okay.
Oh, I see.
And that's where the idea for the read feature came from. It lets you know that someone saw your message even if they can't respond right away.
That's really clever.
It's such a simple but powerful tool.
Yeah, especially when you're in a group chat. You can immediately see who's safe.
Yeah.
It makes you realize that even in the face of tragedy,
Yeah,
good things can still happen.
that's a great point. The read feature is a perfect example of how technology can adapt and evolve to meet our needs, even in the most difficult circumstances.
Totally. Speaking of the 3/11 earthquake, it reminded me of something. I was reading about other people's experiences during the disaster,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of them talked about this strange calm they felt.
Really?
Yeah, like right after the initial shock.
Huh. That is interesting. It's like this moment of disbelief
Right, exactly.
before the reality of the situation sets in.
And what was really amazing was that the communication networks, they stayed up.
Wow, that's lucky.
I know, right?
Yeah.
People could still call and text their loved ones right away.
That's incredible. It really says a lot about Japan's infrastructure.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And it just highlights how critical communication is during these emergencies.
absolutely. It makes you appreciate those things we take for granted, you know?
Yeah, like being able to connect with loved ones instantly during a crisis.
Exactly. It's a reminder that even amidst all the chaos and fear, there can still be hope and connection.
Yeah, it really is, isn't it? This crazy thing about technology, it can connect us, it can give us information, it can even, help keep us safe during emergencies.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, it can like feed into our anxieties and fuel these really complex theories that might not even be true.
It's like a double-edged sword, right? We've got this amazing tool for understanding the world, but we have to be really careful about how we use it.
Yeah, exactly. And how we, interpret the information it gives us. And that's something important to remember here. It's not always about just finding answers. It's about asking the right questions,
Mm.
looking at things from different perspectives and accepting that the world is complex. And that's something we can all try to do. It doesn't matter if you're like a tech expert or not.
I totally agree. It's about being an informed and engaged citizen in this digital age, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. We all have a role to play in shaping the future of data and technology.
Mm-hmm. And it starts with being informed and being engaged and being aware.
Well said. So, to all our listeners out there, stay curious, keep exploring, and don't be afraid to dive deep into the unknown.
Yep.
Until next time.